All right, so there are a couple more things I want to say about functions before we go on. Um, One is about, I want to talk about reusing functions. So when we add, when we define a function, as I said earlier, it's like adding a new word to the vocabulary of the programming language. So we can reuse that function um, anywhere that we would use a built-in function in the case of logo, anywhere we would use a primitive. And then I also want to talk about what happens when we don't have in logo, when we don't have the keyword output, or in Python when we don't have the keyword return. Um, what happens? So first of all, let's start talking. Let's talk about reusing functions. Um, and I think for that I just need to look at Code Sculptor. So let's say I want to write a function that converts Fahrenheit to Celsius. So we looked before at expressions that do this. Now we'll write a function that we can save and just reuse as much as we want whenever we need to do this conversion. So let's define it Fahrenheit to Celsius. Okay, and let's as inputs. Actually, let's think about it. So what do we need for inputs here? We're going to have a function. Well, actually, this function is going to have our Fahrenheit to calculus is going to have, our Fahrenheit to Celsius is going to have one input and one output, right? Yeah. So let's create that. Okay. So I'll get rid of this one, and let's say Fahrenheit to Celsius, and drag that out a little bit. No, I guess not. Okay, and that's going to be a reporter. That's going to be a reporter. Yeah, I think these are frozen, so we don't move them around. It's going to be a reporter. It's going to have one input. So the input is just going to be the degrees in Fahrenheit. And it's going to have an output. It's a reporter, so it's going to have an output that's going to be the degrees in Celsius. Okay. So let's draw the tank for that. Okay, and that's Fahrenheit to Celsius. I wonder if we make that a wider box, if it can fit the whole word in there. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, so it's going to have one input and one output. And I think we'll call the input Fahrenheit. And we'll call the output Celsius. All right, so we're going to have one input coming in that's going to be assigned the variable, it's going to assign a value to the variable Fahrenheit, and then we're going to have an output Celsius. All right, and Okay, and the arrow's coming in. So there's one value that comes in, and there's one value that comes out. Get rid of this one. Okay, so so this is the basic structure of our function. Okay, so in logo, we would start by saying 2 Fahrenheit to Celsius, and then since there's one input named Fahrenheit, we would say something like colon Fahrenheit, and then we would have an output statement somewhere that would output the Celsius variable, right, or value. Okay, all right, so let's but I think just for brevity's sake, I'm just going to do this one in Code Sculptor. So we have this. So we have our Fahrenheit to Celsius. Okay. So we start our function definition with the keyword def. We put the name of our function. Then we're going to have an input of Fahrenheit, colon, and the colon ends our header. Our function header. Then we're going to start our body with the first indented line here. And let's make a variable. Celsius equals, let's see, we talked about this before. We have to subtract off 32 from the value of Fahrenheit. Since Celsius ranges from 0 to 100, Fahrenheit, or 0 being freezing, the freezing temperature of water, and 100 being the boiling temperature. Fahrenheit goes from 32 as the freezing temperature to 212 as the boiling temperature. So if we subtract off 32 from Fahrenheit, Fahrenheit minus 32, now that ranges from 0 to 180, right? So since Fahrenheit minus 32 goes from 0 to 180, and here we might want to stick in actually a comment. We can say Fahrenheit goes from 32 to 12, and then Fahrenheit minus 32 goes from 0 to 180, and then if we multiply that times 100, 100 divided by 180, that goes from 0 to 100, which is what we want, right? So let's see, and then 100 over 180 is equivalent to, if we divide the numerator and the denominator by 20, we get 5/9, right? So we can say Celsius equals Fahrenheit times 5/9. And then we can return Celsius. Okay? So again, when we press run, well, we ran these two statements, but we didn't say anything about Fahrenheit or Celsius. I'm going to just comment these out for now. So, and this is a common thing that programmers do. You have a piece of code that sometimes you might want to run it, sometimes you don't. Well, when you don't want to run it, you just comment it out. Just stick the comment marks in front of it. And then here, I'm going to say print. I'm just going to copy this whole. Whenever I have a function name or a variable name that's kind of long, it helps me to just copy it, because then I don't have to worry that I didn't spell it exactly the same way. There's not so much confusion. So Fahrenheit to Celsius. Well, we know that 32 should come out to 0, right? So we want our next step is to test the code. We know that this guy should come out to 0, and this should come out to 100, right? In Celsius, boiling is 100. So let's just check that. And yep, 0 and 100. So that looks good. So now we've written a function. How about we write a function that uses this Fahrenheit to Celsius? So let's say we wanted to convert Fahrenheit to Kelvin. Okay. Well, Kelvin is, and so we'll say Fahrenheit to Kelvin, and Fahrenheit, we're going to change this to Kelvin. So that's, and we'll input Fahrenheit. So Kelvin is just Celsius plus 273.15. Yeah. And so we can make our Kelvin equal. Now we could, go and redo this calculation, but a very powerful tool that programmers use is just reusing functions that they've already written. And what makes this powerful is that when you if you figure out that you made a mistake somewhere in this Fahrenheit to Celsius, or you just want to have a function that just, things change in the world, and sometimes, a function that made sense before needs to be updated in some way or changed. Well, here we just need to make the change in one place, and we can just add 273.15 to whatever comes out of this function, and that'll give us our Kelvin. And so we can just return our Kelvin. Okay, so let's try that one out. So we can say, use these same, use the same inputs. So 0 should be, or freezing should be 273.15, and boiling should be 100 more than that, right? So 373.15. So let's run it, and yep, here's our Fahrenheit to Celsius, and here's our Fahrenheit to Kelvin. So that's reusing, and then in the next video we're going to talk about what happens when there's no return, when this return gets left off.